Hello everyone, and today we're going to be learning some Russian word endings, the way that words change at the end of a word in a sentence depending on which pronoun comes before it or what tense it is in. So let's get started. So the first thing to go over is, what are Russian word endings? Russian words have different endings depending on when they're being used. Often the ending of a Russian words changes depending on what pronoun you're using. Words also have different endings depending on if they are in present, past, or future tense. It says fast here, that's just a typo, ignore it. Let's see an example of a word in a sentence changing based on the pronoun being used or the pronoun preceding it. So here's the Russian word for speak, which is govorit. Govorit. So that's just the plain Russian word not being used, no conjugation, just what the word is by default in its infinitive form. We then go on. In English, you would always just say he, she, we, they, I, or you speak or speaks. It doesn't really matter what the pronoun is, it's always speak or speaks. So in Russian, however, the word govorit changes based on the pronoun, whether or not you're saying he, she, they, whatever that is. If you say he speaks, then you would say on govorit, and you would remove the miyaki znak from govorit at the end, and it would just become govorit. But if you were to say I speak, then the word ending would change again to ya govoryu. So ya govoryu, govorit has changed to govoryu. So we've replaced the it or the it with you. Ya govoryu. It changes again if you were to say, for example, we speak. Then it would become my govorim. Govorim. So govorit has become govorim. The only real letter that's changed here is the T. At the end has been replaced with an M. So govorim. If you want to say you speak, then there are two ways to change the word ending depending on how formal you want to be. The informal way to say you speak is ty govorish. Ty govorish. Ty govorish по-русски, for example. Do you speak Russian? You'd use this when speaking to someone you know or have already met. Govorish is more informal, like a family member or a friend or something like that. If you want to be more formal, for example, if you are talking to someone who you just met on the street or something, you would change the word ending to vygovoricha. Vygovoricha. So in this case, the word govorit has just an extra e, an extra yeah on the end of govorit. It becomes govoricha. Vygovoricha по-русски. Do you speak Russian? Next, when you are saying he or she speaks Russian, then it just remains the same. So if you are saying he speaks or she speaks, it's always going to be on govorit or ona govorit. Ona govorit. If you want to talk about something that has happened in the past, then you also add a different ending to the word. This one's sort of a given. We sort of have this in English. For example, you would say I am speaking or I spoke would imply that you did it in past tense. I will speak would imply that it's in the future as well. So same thing in Russian. If you want to say I spoke, talking about past tense, then you would say я говорил, я говорил. And you add an L and get rid of the T. Говорил, я говорил. Я говорил по-русски. I spoke in Russian. Past tense things almost always end in il or some similar variation. So, for example, if you were going to say they spoke, it would be они говорили. That would be past tense of they spoke. There is also another word ending if you are talking about a group of people, not including yourself. So that's like using the they pronoun. So when saying they speak, the word ending then changes once more to они говорят. Говорят. Occasionally also говорют. Those are some basic word endings that you should know when speaking Russian. Even if you get the word endings wrong, most people will still get the gist of what you are trying to say. The word endings that only change because of the preceding pronoun don't really affect the meaning of the sentence, and people will still know what you're saying. So if you say, "Oh, я говорим," I speak or whatever, but you've used the word ending conjugation for talking about we, then it would be fine because people would still know what you're talking about. It would sound a little bit strange, but people would probably still understand you. Hopefully you learned something new and can now form some basic word endings and do some basic conjugation of verbs and such. And thanks for watching. Have a nice day. And that's been a real quick video on how to conjugate verbs, word endings, stuff like that. Goodbye.